I want you to imagine just for a moment the concept of a military deployment.
Right.
Like for you, for me, for anyone familiar with how human conflicts have worked since, the dawn of recorded history, a deployment has a highly specific architecture to it.
Yeah, there's a set structure.
Exactly. It has a start date, and crucially, it has an end date.
Hmm.
You are called up, you go to war, you endure the unimaginable, you do your duty, and eventually, well, the fever breaks.
The conflict ends.
Right? There is a ceasefire. There's a peace treaty signed on a desk somewhere. You get a rotation back home. You get shore leave, garrison duty, a return to normalcy. That physiological tension, like that constant adrenaline drip that keeps you alive in a combat zone, it's allowed to finally subside.
Which is vital for human psychology.
Totally. Now, I want you to take that fundamental concept of and ending that deeply human expectation of a return to peace, and I want you to completely erase it from your mind.
Just rip it right out of the dictionary.
Rip it out entirely. I want you to imagine a military force that has been on an active, ceaseless, grinding wartime deployment, not for a decade, not for a century, but for 10,000 years.
It's unfathomable.
10,000 years. No shore leave, no garrison duty, no standing down, no peace treaties, just an unending, relentless application of violence across the stars.
It is a span of time that the human mind, frankly, struggles to fully comprehend. You are talking about a continuous, unbroken military campaign that outlasts the entirety of our own recorded human history.
Yeah,
From the invention of agriculture to the present day, you multiply that, and you still haven't reached the duration of this single operational deployment.
exactly. And that mind-bending reality is exactly what we are dissecting today. We have customized this specific deep dive for you, the listener, because we know you have this deep desire to pull apart complex systems.
You want to understand the sociology of it all.
Right, the logistics, and particularly the psychology of extreme factions. So today, our mission is to examine a group known as the Black Templars, based on excerpts from a fascinating document titled Zealots of the Eternal Crusade.
It's an incredible piece of source material.
It really is. They are a unique brotherhood of genetically engineered holy warriors, and we're going to uncover how their absolutely unyielding, fanatical faith makes them simultaneously the ultimate protectors of their universe and arguably the ultimate inescapable horror of it.
They are definitely both.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand how a single war lasts for 10 millennia, you cannot just look at the middle of the timeline. You have to go back to the exact moment the fire was lit.
Right, you have to look at the psychological trauma of their origins.
And those origins are rooted in a level of galactic trauma that is, well, it's difficult to overstate. The Black Templars were forged in the immediate, smoldering aftermath of an event known as the Horus Heresy.
Which was, for context, a cataclysmic civil war that fundamentally broke the galaxy as humanity knew it.
Yeah, it wasn't just a border dispute.
No, half of the Emperor's greatest armies, his own sons, turned against him. It was a betrayal on a cosmic scale that burned thousands of worlds and nearly extinguished humanity entirely.
So we have to establish right away that the Black Templars did not form in a boardroom during a vacuum of peace.
Far from it.
They were born from the absolute ashes of devastation, extreme paranoia, and the literal near death of their entire species.
Right. It's not just a war, it's the apocalypse, and humanity just barely survived it.
And out of that unbelievable devastation steps a figure named Sigismund.
The founder.
Yes, he is the founder of this group, the first captain of the Imperial Fists Legion. But he holds another title, and this is where the psychology really starts to take shape. He was the very first Emperor's Champion.
That title alone, Emperor's Champion, carries an impossible amount of weight.
It does.
He isn't just a general with stars on his collar. He is a personal, chosen avatar of the Emperor's martial will.
Right. But what Sigismund does, upon founding this new offshoot, this chapter called the Black Templars, is what sets the stage for the next 10,000 years. He doesn't just write a mission statement,
He doesn't draft a standard operational procedure.
No, or a set of tactical guidelines. He makes a sacred, binding, blood-deep oath. He vows that the Black Templars will never, ever rest in their duty to purge the enemies of the Emperor. Period.
No conditions.
No conditions, no end state. This is what they call the Eternal Crusade.
That phrasing is the linchpin to their entire existence, a binding oath to never rest. Think about that in conventional military terms.
It's totally contradictory.
Exactly. A crusade, historically or tactically, usually has a highly specific, measurable objective. You are crusading to take a specific city or to reclaim a lost sector of space, or maybe to defeat a specific enemy warlord.
And once that objective is achieved, the crusade is over. Everyone goes home.
Right. But an eternal crusade is a deliberate paradox. It implies that the objective can never truly be achieved, or far more terrifyingly, it implies that the act of warring itself is the objective.
It makes me think of a highly specific analogy to really visualize what Sigismund did here, fundamentally. Like, imagine a master swordsman.
Okay.
He has just barely survived this devastating civil war, the Horus Heresy. He has seen the worst of the worst, his own brothers turning into literal monsters. And he makes a psychological pivot that is so extreme, so absolute, that when the war is technically declared over, he draws his sword, looks at the scabbard on his hip, and decides to simply snap it in half.
He breaks the container.
Exactly. He breaks the very mechanism designed to hold the weapon at peace. He ensures that his blade can literally never be sheathed again.
That's a powerful image.
He is committing himself and every single soul who follows him to hold that drawn, heavy sword forever. But, playing devil's advocate here, looking at the sociology of this, how does a single vow hold a massive military organization together for 10 millennia?
That's the real puzzle.
Right, because words are just words. A guy makes a dramatic speech 10,000 years ago. How does an oath survive the death of the founder, the death of his successors, and continue for hundreds of generations without, diluting?
That is the pivotal question, isn't it? The answer lies in how they managed a total psychological shift from defense to eternal offense.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
You see, when you have a standing army, even a very aggressive one, their primary psychological posture is almost always defensive.
You exist to protect borders.
Exactly. You maintain the status quo, you react to emerging threats. But Sigismund's unbreakable vow completely re-engineers that mindset at a cellular level. The vow isn't just a motivational poster sitting framed on a wall in their headquarters.
It becomes the structural DNA of the group.
Yes. When Sigismund essentially snapped that scabbard, he completely eliminated the concept of peacetime from their cultural lexicon.
Meaning, a Black Templar doesn't even possess the mental framework to imagine what stopping would look like.
Precisely. If your entire organizational identity, your reason for drawing breath, is predicated on an eternal crusade, then stopping even for a moment of logistical respite or strategic consolidation is not just a breach of military protocol.
It's a failure.
It is an existential failure.
Yeah.
It is a violation of the sacred. To maintain a vow for 10,000 years requires more than just rigorous military discipline.
Because discipline eventually breaks down, right?
No matter how harsh it is, yes.
Yeah.
Supply chains falter. Leadership becomes corrupt. Morale dips. You get generational drift where the great-grandsons forget the zeal of the founders.
So to sustain this constant grinding momentum over millennia, you need something stronger.
You require an ideological bedrock that defies normal human or even superhuman limits. The vow cannot just be a promise. It has to become a religion.
Which is the perfect entry point into what is honestly the most jarring realization about the Black Templars. Because when we introduce religion into this mix, we hit a massive philosophical point of divergence between the Black Templars and almost every other faction of super soldiers in this universe.
Yes, the religious aspect completely isolates them.
And this brings us to their doctrines, specifically how they view their supreme leader, the Emperor of Mankind.
This is a fundamental defining difference in how the Black Templars operate psychologically compared to the rest of the Adeptus Astartes, the standard Space Marine chapters.
And I have to admit, when I was digging into the history here for this deep dive, I had to stop and reread the lore.
It throws a lot of people off.
It really does. Because the reality of this universe is that most Space Marines, these ultimate genetically enhanced giants who conquer worlds in the Emperor's name, they actually view the Emperor with an immense, profound respect, but it is entirely secular.
They see him as a leader, not a deity.
Right. They see him as the absolute pinnacle of humanity, the ultimate leader, the greatest human mind and martial force to ever live. But it's the respect a fiercely loyal soldier has for a legendary historical general.
Like Alexander the Great or Julius Caesar.
Exactly. But the Black Templars, they look at that same figure and they actively worship him as a literal divine god. They are hardcore adherents of the imperial creed, the state religion.
They've fully crossed over into zealotry.
Wait, so the standard super soldiers don't view their leader as a god. That completely flips the script on how I imagine the hierarchy of this universe operating.
It is a profound revelation for anyone studying this era. The wider Imperium, the countless trillions of everyday baseline human citizens living in hives and on agricultural worlds, they are forced to follow this state religion, the Imperial Creed.
To them, the God Emperor is a divine entity sitting on a golden throne judging their souls.
Exactly. But the Space Marines, by and large, hold on to an older, more secular truth from before the Horus Heresy. They possess the historical memory that he was a man.
A very powerful man, but still a man.
A man of unparalleled, reality-altering power, undeniably, but biologically and philosophically a man who, ironically, originally wanted to eradicate religion entirely.
Which just adds such a layer of tragedy to it.
It does. But the Black Templars, however, have crossed that threshold. They have completely abandoned that secular historical truth and fully embraced the divine narrative of the masses, but weaponized it for war.
But how does that actually change things on the ground? Like, let's get into the dirt here.
Okay.
If you take a biologically enhanced super soldier who fights out of secular duty, out of loyalty to a government, a flag, or a great leader, and you replace that with a soldier who fights because they believe with every fiber of their being that they are the literal holy instrument of a divine creator.
Yeah.
How does shifting from secular duty to divine worship actually change their effectiveness on the battlefield?
It changes everything.
Is it just flavor text? Does it just mean they shout different slogans when they charge? Or does it tangibly alter the mechanics of the war zone?
What's fascinating here is that their faith is repeatedly categorized not as a cultural quirk, but as their greatest weapon.
Wow.
It is absolutely not just flavor text. It is a tactical and psychological multiplier of terrifying proportions.
Oh, so?
Let's analyze the mechanics of religious fanaticism when applied to post-human biology. A secular soldier, no matter how brave, no matter how highly trained, operates on a subconscious spectrum of risk assessment.
They calculate odds.
They calculate odds. They experience fear, even if their training allows them to conquer it. They might hesitate if an order seems fundamentally suicidal, or they might experience moral injury, PTSD, when faced with the unending, gruesome horrors of galactic war.
Right, because no matter how many extra organs you implant in them, they are still fundamentally tethered to a baseline of rationality and self-preservation.
Exactly. But when you introduce the absolute blinding conviction of the Imperial Creed, when you view the Emperor as an infallible, literal god who is watching you fight, you fundamentally alter the battlefield geometry.
Our parameters change.
Every single military engagement is no longer a strategic attempt to secure resources or territory. It is a holy rite.
A sacrament of blood.
A sacrament. Every enemy combatant is no longer just an opposing force with different political goals. They are a heretic. They are an existential affront to the divine order of the universe.
And when the enemy is a heretic, the rule book just completely goes out the window, doesn't it?
Totally.
You don't negotiate with a heretic. You don't try to capture them to gather intelligence. You don't establish a demilitarized zone. You purge them.
You remove all hesitation. The psychological armor this provides is immense. This faith drives them to acts of impossible, seemingly suicidal heroism.
Because death isn't a failure anymore.
No, when death in battle is no longer perceived as a loss of life, but rather a holy martyrdom that instantly elevates your soul to the side of your God, the very concept of a tactical retreat or surrender vanishes entirely from your tactical playbook.
That is genuinely terrifying.
But it goes deeper than just bravery. This fanaticism literally shields them from corruption.
Okay, what do you mean by corruption?
In a universe where they are frequently fighting nightmarish, insidious forces of chaos, these are entities that actively try to corrupt the mind and soul. The absolute, unyielding, concrete wall of religious zealotry leaves absolutely no cracks for doubt, temptation, or corruption to take root.
It's like their belief system is so dense, so heavy, that nothing else can physically penetrate it.
That's a great way to put it.
They are hermetically sealed in their own righteousness.
But whenever you look at history and see a strict fanatical religion, it always comes with equally strict, uncompromising taboos.
There's always a heresy.
Right. If your faith is your ultimate weapon, there is always going to be an ultimate sin. What is the thing they despise the most? And when you look at their specific doctrines, the answer is incredibly specific, and it leads us directly into how they wage war. It bridges us right into their absolute systemic eradication of what they call the witch.
Yes, the core tenet of abhor the witch, destroy the witch.
It's intense. It is vital to understand their profound hatred for anything that deviates from the human form: aliens, mutants, which is somewhat standard for the zealous factions of this universe. But the Black Templars harbor a highly specific, intense, burning hatred for the Psyker.
Right. And for you listening, we need to quickly define what a psyker is in this context. A psyker is essentially someone who can tap into an alternate dimension called the warp to wield psychic powers.
They are channeling raw, chaotic energy.
Yeah, they can manipulate reality, read minds, shoot lightning, crush tanks with a thought. They cast what we, in our modern terms, would essentially call magic or sorcery.
Exactly.
Now, the Black Templars adhere strictly to an ancient, heavily debated decree from the Emperor himself, something called the Council of Nicaea, which forbade the use of sorcery within the Space Marine legions.
A decree most other legions eventually ignored or adapted.
But not the Templars. Because of their fanatical adherence to this thousands of years old decree, the Templars have completely eliminated a role known as librarians from their ranks. And just to be clear, a librarian in this universe isn't someone who checks out books, you know.
No, no.
In the Adeptus Astartes, a librarian is a battle psyker. They are the Space Marines' own sanctioned magic users.
And we must emphasize that almost all other Space Marine chapters actively utilize these librarians.
They are seen as essential.
They are considered absolutely vital, irreplaceable strategic assets. They provide wide-scale psychic defense against enemy sorcery. They can unleash devastating offensive powers that turn the tide of battle, and they offer critical intelligence gathering and communication capabilities across the stars.
They are a fundamental staple of standard modern Space Marine warfare.
They really are.
But the Black Templars looked at that standard operational procedure, looked at the immense tactical advantage of having battle wizards on their side, and said absolutely not.
They reject it entirely.
They consider any use of psychic powers in battle, even by their own side, to be a dangerous, morally compromising, corrupting influence. They won't touch it. Here's where it gets really interesting for me. I want to put this in a modern context.
Let's hear it.
It's like a modern Tier 1 elite military unit, the SEAL Team 6, looking at the landscape of 21st century warfare and deciding to completely ban the use of digital technology, cyber warfare, hacking, satellite imagery, and drones.
Because they think it's evil.
Right. They believe the internet itself is fundamentally evil and corrupting. So instead of fighting fire with fire, instead of using their own hackers to stop enemy hackers, they choose to hunt enemy cyber terrorists face to face, kicking down server farm doors with overwhelming, primitive brute force.
That is a highly apt analogy. They are deliberately, consciously stripping away a layer of warfare that every other faction in the galaxy considers absolutely essential for survival.
And that's exactly what I want to push back on. Like, look at this objectively. As a military strategy, isn't that a massive, potentially fatal mistake?
It certainly looks like one.
If you are a military force frequently deployed against the forces of chaos entities that use reality-bending magic, demons that defy the laws of physics, isn't deliberately handicapping your own arsenal by refusing to field your own psykers, a strategic blunder of epic proportions.
You'd think so.
You are literally bringing a chainsword to a magic fight. How are they not wiped out instantly?
From a purely conventional, rational military standpoint, yes, it appears to be a severe handicap. It is asymmetric warfare where they have willingly surrendered entire domains of the battlefield.
Right, they just gave up the high ground.
However, what we have to understand is that for the Black Templars, this apparent handicap is engineered into a highly specialized strength. It all comes back to the psychological mechanics of ideological purity we discussed earlier.
Okay, but how does purity stop a psychic attack? If someone throws a fireball at your head or tries to melt your brain with a thought, feeling really pure about your religion doesn't seem like it would stop the physics of it.
Because in the specific reality of this universe, psychic powers and the corrupting forces of chaos do not just operate on pure physics. They often prey upon the architecture of the mind. They prey upon doubt, upon secret ambitions, upon hidden fears, and critically, upon the very connection a psyker has to the warp, the source of their power.
So a psyker is basically a conduit that swings both ways.
Exactly. By completely discarding psychic weaponry within their own ranks, the Black Templars eliminate the most vulnerable points of entry for that specific type of corruption. They achieve total, unblemished, ideological purity.
And that actually physically protects them.
It does. That purity physically hardens their minds. It is stated that their hatred of psykers is so profound, so absolute, that it manifests in their battle tactics and their sheer willpower, allowing them to better resist psychic powers.
Wait, so their hatred is literally an anti-magic shield? That is wild.
It is a documented phenomenon.
They hate the concept of sorcery so deeply that when an enemy sorcerer tries to attack their minds, they don't find a mind to manipulate. They just hit a solid brick wall of pure, unadulterated contempt.
Exactly. They are frequently deployed against chaos forces precisely because they are the perfect blunt force countermeasure.
Because they can't be turned.
Right. Where a standard Space Marine librarian might eventually be tempted by the dark, whispering powers of an enemy sorcerer, or where a regular, secular soldier might have their minds shattered by witnessing reality-warping horrors, a Black Templar experiences none of that.
He just sees another target.
He just sees another heretic to burn. He does not try to understand the Enfi's magic. He does not try to counter it with a counterspell. He relentlessly, singularly hunts the sorcerer down to eliminate the physical source of the anomaly.
Just sprinting through the fire to punch the wizard in the face.
They close the distance through the fire and the lightning, and they apply overwhelming kinetic physical violence. Their complete refusal to engage in the psychic arms race is exactly what makes them immune to its darkest consequences. It starves the enemy of any psychological leverage.
It's the ultimate brute force solution to a supernatural problem. They essentially weaponize their own narrow-mindedness.
That's one way to frame it, yes.
They are too stubborn to be mind-controlled. But if a military force is willing to casually ignore standard operational doctrines by completely refusing to use psychers, it really makes you wonder what other fundamental rules are they breaking.
Oh, they break quite a few.
If they don't care about the accepted norms of warfare in one specific area, they probably view the rest of the rulebook as optional too. And that logic leads us directly into a massive revelation regarding how they organize themselves.
The logistics of their crusade.
Yeah, they don't just break tactical rules, they break the fundamental constitutional laws of their own universe's military structure.
We are entering the territory of their blatant defiance of the Codex Astartes. This is where the sheer audacity of the Black Templars truly comes into focus. They are famously, unapologetically non-Codex compliant.
Okay, let's break down exactly what that means, because the numbers here are staggering and the logistical implications are just insane.
Let's hear the numbers.
There is a strict foundational law in this universe, the Codex Astartes, written by a demigod named Roboute Guilliman, that strictly limits a Space Marine chapter to exactly 1,000 battle brothers, 1,000 super soldiers. That is the hard legal limit for any single commander.
And we must understand why that law exists. It is a deliberate structural bottleneck designed to prevent any single Space Marine commander from ever amassing enough personal military power to threaten the Imperium itself.
Because of what happened during the Horus Heresy.
Exactly. After the horrors of the Horus Heresy, where individual commanders controlled legions of hundreds of thousands of super soldiers and nearly destroyed humanity, the surviving architects of the Imperium's military realized that concentrating that much power was a recipe for extinction.
So they broke the toys up.
They decentralized the entire military. They broke the massive legions down into tiny chapters, 1,000 Marines per chapter. No more. It was a check and balance.
But the Black Templars, estimates of their true numbers place them anywhere between 5,000 and 6,000 active Marines.
It's a massive violation.
I mean, I have to stop and highlight the sheer absurdity of this. The supreme law of the land says 1,000. They have 6,000. How on earth does the wider Imperium, this massive, hyper-bureaucratic, authoritarian regime that executes planets for minor tax evasion, let a single faction get away with having a private army 6 times the legal limit?
It seems impossible to hide.
You don't just, hide 5,000 extra 8-foot-tall super soldiers under a rug. Who is forging the accounting books? How are they actually pulling this off without triggering another civil war?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see the absolute, perhaps accidental genius of the Eternal Crusade as a structural mechanism.
Yeah.
It acts as a massive, completely functional loophole to Imperial law.
A loophole. Okay, how does that work?
Let's look at how the Black Templars actually operate logistically. Their structure is designed entirely for perpetual nomadic war, not for garrisoning a single planet. They are a fleet-based force. They're constantly on the move, living entirely on massive warships.
Right, they don't have a home address. You can't just knock on their door and count beds.
Exactly. And more importantly, they are highly decentralized. That 5,000 to 6,000 number isn't sitting in one giant, terrifying armada waiting to be audited by the Inquisition.
That would definitely raise some red flags.
It would be an immediate target. Instead, they are divided into numerous, constantly shifting independent crusade forces, each commanded by a marshal. Each crusade is a completely self-sufficient army with its own ships, foundries, and recruitment mechanisms operating independently to achieve its objectives across the vast, incomprehensible distances of the galaxy.
Ah, so it's a shell game. It's a galactic, heavily armed shell game.
Precisely. Put yourself in the shoes of an Imperial auditor or a deeply suspicious Inquisitor who wants to count the Black Templars to prove they are breaking the law. How would you even begin?
I have no idea.
You would have to somehow track down every single individual Crusade fleet, scattered across tens of thousands of light years, engaged in active, horrific war zones.
Right, and they're constantly moving.
You would have to somehow freeze time and tally them all up simultaneously before the fleets moved on to casualties or recruited new initiates from war-torn planets. It is a logistical impossibility for the bureaucratic authorities to track, audit, or control them. The Endless Crusade provides the perfect dynamic cover for endless, unregulated expansion.
It's brilliant in a very dark, highly militant way. They've essentially created a decentralized terror cell structure where cells operate independently without direct central communication, but they've applied it to a massive, galaxy-spanning army of religious zealots.
That's an accurate structural comparison.
But wait, that brings up a huge logistical and psychological problem for the Templars themselves.
The unity issue.
Yeah. If you have an illegal army of 6,000 fanatical super soldiers, and you scatter them across the galaxy in independent fleets commanded by different marshals who might not see each other for centuries, how do you keep them from fracturing?
It's real risk.
How do you ensure that Marshal A on the eastern fringe and Marshal B in the galactic north don't develop different interpretations of the religion and eventually start fighting each other? Without a central homeworld holding them together, how do they remain unified?
That is where the Templar vows come into play, essentially replacing standard military command and control protocols. Before battle, they do not simply take an oath of moment.
What's that?
An oath of moment is a standard mission-specific pledge that regular Space Marines take. It's tactical. Instead, the Black Templars swear one of their ancient, incredibly powerful Templar vows. These are described as do-or-die promises made directly before the Emperor, essentially channeling the spirit of their founder, Sigismund.
The history mentions there are 4 central vows, right? And while the specifics of the wording aren't always publicized, the mere existence of these central, inflexible pillars is fascinating.
It acts as the ultimate, unbreakable, unifying force. While standard Space Marines swear an oath to accomplish a specific tactical objective like, we will take this hill, or we will assassinate this commander, or hold this gate until reinforcements arrive, the Temple vow is absolute.
It's broader.
It is a spiritual contract. By substituting standard, flexible, operational oaths with these ancient, unyielding religious vows, the Black Templars ensure that no matter how far a Crusade fleet travels, no matter how isolated a marshal becomes from the High Marshal or the rest of the chapter, their core purpose remains fiercely, aggressively unified.
So the vows act as a tether.
The vows tether every single Marine to the exact same absolute zero of fanaticism. They might be separated by the literal void of space, they might not communicate for decades, but they are ideologically lockstep. They are all fighting the exact same eternal war.
Okay, so let's pull all of these massive threads together for a moment. We have the unbroken 10,000-year vow initiated by Sigismund in the ashes of the greatest betrayal in human history. We have this weaponized faith where they worship their leader as a literal god, removing all fear and doubt. We have their absolute blinding hatred of psychers and their refusal to use magic, relying instead on pure hate to shield their minds.
Right.
We have this highly illegal, oversized army of 6,000 super soldiers hiding brilliantly within the loophole of an endless, decentralized, fleet-based crusade. When you take all these extreme factors, you put them in a pressure cooker, and you let them simmer and compound over 100 centuries, what does the culmination of all that actually look like?
What is the end product?
Yeah, what does a Black Templar look like to the average, everyday person in this universe? Which brings us to the final and frankly most chilling aspect of our deep dive today, the ultimate horror of the Black Templars.
Yes. This is where we must take a very distinct philosophical turn. We have to analyze what it truly means to be the living embodiment of these traits over an endless timescale.
And what's fascinating is exactly why they are terrifying. If you ask someone why a genetically modified super soldier is scary, they'd say, well, because they're huge or heavily armed or cruel.
Sure, the physical threat.
But that's not it. They are not terrifying because they are intentionally cruel. They are not terrifying because they are evil. In fact, in their own minds, they are the absolute pinnacle of goodness, purity, and righteousness.
The heroes of their own story.
Exactly. They're terrifying because of their utter fanatical certainty.
Certainty. It is a word that carries immense, often unexamined weight in the context of warfare and governance.
They are described as living embodiments of a theocratic nightmare. They are totally immune to doubt. Now, we've talked extensively about how that makes them fearless in battle, how it uniquely shields them from the corruption of enemy sorcerers.
It's a huge asset defensively.
Right. But here we have to flip the coin and look at the dark side of that immunity. Because they are immune to doubt, they are completely, fundamentally blind to mercy or compromise. So what does this all mean? For me, as I was piecing this together, it felt like a massive bait and switch.
How so? Walk me through your thought process.
Well, think about the journey we've been on. We spent this whole time looking at these guys, analyzing their sheer willpower, their refusal to back down, their brilliant logistical loopholes to keep fighting the good fight. And it's very easy to view them as the ultimate heroic protectors of humanity.
The knights in shining armor.
Yeah, the classic knights, plunging into the dark to fight the monsters so we don't have to. They don't give up. They don't retreat. They are holding the line against unimaginable horrors for 10,000 years. It sounds incredibly noble. But then, when you look at the reality of their interactions with the Imperium they supposedly serve, the rug gets pulled out. They are ultimately revealed as a terrifying hazard. They are described as the perfect weapon of a decaying Imperium, and it is explicitly stated that they are a weapon that is as dangerous to those it protects as it is to the enemy.
That is a massive, horrifying shift in perspective.
It changes everything.
This raises an important question, perhaps the most important question of our entire analysis today. What is the true societal cost of absolute certainty?
Yeah.
When we look at human history, or indeed the history of any complex, functioning society, progress, healing, and diplomacy, all strictly require a degree of doubt. Doubt is what allows you to question if you are on the right path.
Right.
It is what allows you to feel empathy for an opposing viewpoint. It allows for nuance.
Doubt is the mechanism that allows you to pump the brakes before you drive off a cliff.
Exactly. When a warrior has zero doubt, they completely lose the capacity for empathy, nuance, and critically mercy. Imagine a Black Templar looking at a planetary governor.
Okay, set the scene.
This governor was faced with an invading alien force, and to save his population from being entirely slaughtered, he made a minor forced compromise. Maybe he paid a tribute or allowed them to pass through his sector.
Just to keep his people alive.
A nuanced mind would see a difficult diplomatic situation, a desperate leader trying to save billions of civilian lives. But the Templar will not see that.
What do they see?
The Templar will only see heresy. The Templar will only see the failure to adhere strictly to the unyielding letter of the Imperial Creed. And because they have zero doubt, because they are utterly certain of their righteousness, their response will be immediate, absolute, and total eradication of that governor and likely anyone who followed his orders.
They are a reflection of a decaying Imperium. I think that word decaying is so deliberate in the source material. Because what does a society actually need to stop decaying?
He needs builders.
It needs builders, healers, politicians, diplomats, engineers, people willing to compromise to create functioning infrastructure and lasting peace.
And the Black Templars can be none of those things. Their sheer ideological rigidity, their 10,000-year momentum of pure, unadulterated offense means they cannot build, they cannot heal, they cannot compromise, they can only burn.
Just a scorched earth policy.
Let me offer a different way to conceptualize this.
Yeah.
Imagine an incredibly advanced autonomous planetary defense system. It was programmed thousands of years ago with one simple directive: destroy any unauthorized object entering the atmosphere.
Okay.
It possesses zero capacity to update its parameters. Now, this system will flawlessly shoot down an invading enemy dreadnought, saving the planet. It functions perfectly. But tomorrow, if a civilian medical transport arrives carrying refugees and its authorization transponder happens to be malfunctioning, that exact same defense system will blow the medical ship out of the sky.
Because it doesn't know any better.
And it will feel exactly the same amount of mechanical righteousness both times. It lacks the capacity to differentiate context. That is the Black Templar. They are an algorithm of pure destruction.
And they will stand in the vaporized ashes of that medical transport and call it a holy victory for the Emperor.
Precisely. They will destroy the very infrastructure they are meant to defend. That is why they are a deeply tragic weapon. They are necessary, perhaps, to fight the truly existential threats of their universe, the reality-warping horrors of chaos, the endless, consuming alien hordes.
You need monsters to fight monsters.
But the fire they use to push back the dark is entirely uncontrolled. They are the crusading knights of the 41st millennium, and they will burn the galaxy to ash in their relentless pursuit of the Emperor's truth.
Burn the galaxy to ash. It doesn't say they will save the galaxy. It says they will burn it to ash. That distinction is everything, and it really synthesizes the entire journey we've been on today.
It's the core of their tragedy.
We started with Sigismund, standing in the smoldering ruins of a galactic civil war, making a vow to simply never stop fighting. We saw how over thousands of years that vow calcified into a weaponized religion, where they worship their human leader as a divine god, giving them the impenetrable psychological armor to fight forever.
Right.
We explored how their absolute fanaticism leads them to abhor magic, eradicating their own psychers and facing supernatural horrors with nothing but kinetic brutality and pure, hateful willpower.
We examined the staggering logistics of their endless war, hiding a massive, illegal army of 6,000 super soldiers within a decentralized, ever-moving Crusade fleet. A force bound together not by bureaucracy, but by ancient do-or-die vows spanning the cosmos.
And finally, we arrived at the chilling reality of what that centuries-long pressure cooker creates. A force of protectors so fanatically certain of their righteousness that they become a nightmare to the very people they are sworn to protect. A weapon that cannot be turned off, wielded by a decaying empire that has fundamentally lost control of its own sword.
Which leaves us with a profound, lingering question, a thought experiment to extrapolate from everything we've discussed today. If the Black Templars' entire organizational structure, their psychology, their logistics, and their very faith are all predicated on an eternal crusade to purge external enemies, what would actually happen if they ever won? Think about it. If a weapon is designed only for relentless, merciless war, and it suddenly finds itself without an external enemy, does an ultimate victory actually guarantee their self-destruction?
Because they have no off switch.
If the last alien is purged, if the last heretic is burned to ash, they cannot simply lay down their arms and become farmers or politicians. Their vow, their 10,000-year cultural DNA, strictly forbids it.
They don't have a scabbard. Sigismund broke it 10,000 years ago.
Exactly. So, driven by their fanatical certainty, their absolute inability to compromise or exist in peace, would they inevitably turn their burning gaze inward?
Oh, man.
Would they begin searching for microscopic flaws, for new heretics, among the very humanity they just fought 10 millennia to protect? In the end, is their eternal crusade truly about saving humanity, or is humanity just the necessary fuel they use to keep their crusade burning?
That is a haunting thought to leave on. A protector who needs a threat so badly, whose identity is so tied to warfare, that they might just invent a threat if they ever run out of real ones.
It's a dark possibility.
It really is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's a fascinating look at the extreme edges of faith, duty, and warfare. We hope this exploration into the Black Templars has given you something to chew on, and we encourage you to keep questioning the nature of certainty in the world around you. Because as we've seen today, sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't a monster hiding in the dark. It's a warrior who is absolutely, unquestioningly certain they are right.